Okay, so I think we can do both, right, Corey?
I think so. It says recording right now, so.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. It's now noon on Monday, June 22nd. I'm Bernadette Wagner. I am the founder of Prime Time for Women, and I am so excited to be offering this special Facebook Live event. At least we hope we're live. If not, we'll share this link later. To recognize the importance of really coming together to work towards justice and equality. So this little meeting is called an honest conversation on race. And I'm just going to allow each of the presenters to introduce themselves and maybe share a little bit about yourselves. Carolyn Klauser.
Okay, so I am Carolyn Klauser. I've lived in Hagerstown about 2.5 years, and I had spent the majority of my life in Franklin County, Pennsylvania, in the Chambersburg area. So I'm just coming at this from that perspective and growing up a pretty rural area.
Okay, and Linda Brooks.
Hello, everyone. This is Linda Brooks. I am from Hagerstown, Maryland, and I'm thankful to be a part of this panel so we can make changes for the history of Black Lives Matter.
Okay, great. And Carolyn Sterling.
Yes, I moved here in the early 70s from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I'm very boots on the ground as far as the community goes, and I'm happy to be a part of this panel.
And Corey.
Hi, I'm Corey. I've lived in Hagerstown for majority of my life, growing up here since I was about 10. I've definitely seen a lot here in Hagerstown and in Washington County, period. So I'm glad to be a part of this and making steps towards heading in the right direction.
And I just wanted to tell our audience that this came about partly because Linda Brooks and I received a communication from Carolyn saying, what is our role? How do we make a difference? And one of the things that I think about women in their prime, we are uniquely positioned because we've lived a little, we've learned a lot, we've made some mistakes, and we've grown because of them. And one of the things I've learned is that I don't have all the answers, and I need to be a listener. And I need to hear from people from their experience, because I can't know what I haven't experienced. But once I understand somebody else's experience, that can inform me moving forward. So I'm hoping that this conversation is an opportunity to share your experiences and to ask us questions, and for us to ask you all questions, this whole dialogue, this whole way around. So with that, I'm going to start off and ask Linda Brooks, because she was the other one who received the email communication, and ask you to tell us where you are right now in your desire to confront racism and maybe even define racism in your words for us.
I would say where I'm at with this as far as racism, I am on board. It's something that is been happening for so many generations as far as equal rights among all of us. We all need to be treated with respect. And being an African American myself, I still experience racism as of today. So my thoughts on this is that I'm fighting for justice too, because it shouldn't be people treated differently because of their color or the location or their status of anything. We all need to be treated the same. So racism is, to me, is when people are treated differently and not the same.
Okay. Somebody else want to jump in there?
In my opinion, I'm 27 years old and I'm a little bit younger, and, things are definitely different than you ladies of your prime, but it's still kind of the same. Growing up, the first time I experienced racism when I was 8 years old, and I was at recess and a kid told me I should be playing on the monkey bars because I look like a monkey. And I was confused. I was 8. I didn't know what that meant. But then as I got older, And being in Washington County, you experience a lot of that, especially from other kids who think that it's okay because their parents have made it okay. You know, I've been in sporting events, and you can ask Beth yourself, we've dealt with, my teammates have heard and defended people calling me the N-word, or, oh, you're just this and that. We've been escorted to sporting events by police officers because we were going to schools that were openly racist. We had to play in playoff games where there were police officers standing around the courts and fields because we weren't sure how the fans or anyone was going to react to us, you know. And being a teenage kid playing in a sporting event, you shouldn't have to deal with that. And it's crazy that we do. It's sad that people don't see the racism that actually happens because it's very open. It's very open. You get it from people you think are your friends. And then when the going gets tough, you find out they don't really support what I have to say, or they don't really support me and people that look like me. I think that it's unfair to say that racism doesn't exist. I think it's unfair to say, well, if you just act a certain way, they won't do this or they won't do that. I was brought up, my mom was strict. She didn't play any games. I was on a straight and narrow my whole life. But I've still dealt with racism from police officers, from outside people. It doesn't matter what you do. It's how you look. And you don't know somebody based off of what they look like. And you can't get to know someone when you already have this preconceived notion that, well, they're Black, so I know I'm not going to like them.
Right.
That's
You-
perfect.
You
Yes.
cut yourself off
That's true.
from so many opportunities to learn about the world, about other people, about anything. I think everyone has something to offer, despite what you look like, what your job is, who you love, where you play, where you go. Everyone has something to offer.
Maybe not just despite of, but because of who you are, right? You might have something special. Carolyn, how about you? You didn't get to weigh in, Carolyn Sterling.
Sure. Okay, Carolyn Sterling. Yes, I have to agree with everything, first of all, that Corey has said. I've been one of those parents that had to go to every game, especially away games, with my children. And not just supporting my children, but the team whose parents, Black children who couldn't be there because of how bad it was for them to be on the either wrestling or playing basketball or soccer. You have to be there to support and actually to jump in and protect if you have to. Because I know police were there, but police heard the N-word and they heard all that was going on. They saw the crowds getting anxious and getting fired up. And very rarely did I ever see one of them go over to the crowd and say, calm down. It was like, we're here, but I didn't know why they were there. I'm from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and school I went to, all the city schools we were integrated. So my most dealings with racism was coming to Maryland. Hit me real hard when I tried to find a job here. I have a very good business background, and different places I applied, and even people here, my friends here said, well, you know, they're not going to hire you because they've already met their quota. And I'm thinking, they've met their quota? And I mean, I knew what that meant, but my mind was like,
Right, yeah.
I'm not sure they're understanding. So I went and I applied, and sure enough, I'm not being cocky, but I knew I was qualified, and I didn't get the jobs.
So let me ask you a question. I read an interesting quote by Austin Channing Brown, and one of her quotes was that racism isn't necessarily somebody doing something mean. It's built into policy, it's systemic. And
Yes.
let me see if I can read it. She said, when you believe niceness, wait, I gotta put my glasses on because I can't read this. When you believe niceness disproves the presence of racism, it's easy to start believing bigotry is rare, and that the label racist should only be applied to mean-spirited, intentional acts of discrimination. The problem with this framework, besides being a gross misunderstanding of how racism works in the system, is that and it's enabled by nice people, is that it obligates me to be nice in return, and that keeps racism going. So
Yes.
it's racism not just a disadvantage of Black people, it
Right.
is an advantage of white people. And that's sort of what people are not recognizing, right?
Exactly.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
They're
yes, yes.
not recognizing the privilege
The privilege,
that
okay.
you have from the womb.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Just being
that's
born white already puts you in that privileged category. We're not asking that we change our colors. That's never going to happen.
Correct,
But we're asking that we're not defined by our color.
correct.
And
Yes.
Carolyn Klauser, were you going to ask a question or make a comment?
yeah. I was going to ask if I could comment on that a bit because I'm realizing now that I have been privileged, and I did not know that until very recently. So I grew up in total poverty. I had a large family. There were 12 kids, and of course my parents. So 14 of us, and my dad was the only one who worked, of course, growing up. And so when I would hear white privilege, I would think that's not me because I didn't grow up privileged. I grew up in poverty. But as I've gotten older and started to learning more about public health issues and community health issues, I realized that my life was very, very different than people who grow up and which are predominantly Black, grow up in the cities, the towns where they didn't have big yards. Like we had a big yard, so we gardened and we went to the orchard and picked fruit and we canned and froze and my brothers hunted. And so I didn't really understand what white privilege was, but just the fact that my parents could own property where they owned property put me at a privilege, even though I grew up in poverty. And I'm really starting to learn about that. I had met a friend probably 4 or 5 years ago, and he is a Black man, and he started to get me to see that my life is different just being white. Like one of my coworkers had shared a story just last week with us when we did a moment of solidarity or a time of solidarity to express our unity on injustice. And he is a Black man, very well educated man, very well experienced. And he talked about how it was different for him. He was coming out, he was dropping a friend off coming out of a building. It was late at night. But next thing he knew, he was thrown up against a police car with guns drawn at him because there was a Black man who had committed a serious crime not far from there. So they were looking for any Black man. And he said that doesn't happen with white men. With white men, they're going to say, a white man this tall with this color hair, and they're not going to stop just any single Black man. And I never really stopped to think about those kinds of things. And so that's kind of why I reached out to Bernadette and Linda, because I know I need to learn about that. And I can't learn about that without reaching out and having conversations like this.
And I appreciate that. And this is
Yes.
the chance for Carolyn and Corey and Linda to really not just talk to these two white women that are here, but to talk to all white people, not just women. And you know, Corey, I love your perspective as a younger woman because I do think that
Yes.
we're in our prime and we've seen a lot.
Yes,
of
yes.
But your generation will inherit this and will move this forward, this progress. So although I feel like we have some wisdom to pass on to you, I feel like you have this experience and this passion that you can incite and move us all forward. So I'm so glad that even though you're a baby and you're not in your prime, I'm glad you're on Part-Time for Women.
I think for people
Linda
my
Brooks, I was going to ask you, you have worked in the community doing healthcare in connection with Meritus Health, and you also have your own business as a health and fitness coach. How does racism impact the Black community from your perspective? Did we lose her?
Well, no, I'm here. I was just thinking on the question. How can I say this?
You can say it
Although
honestly, because this is a conversation on words.
I, I, kn- I know. Well, not to put anyone on the spot because, you know, I'm still doing a lot in the community and working. I know, just I'll say it like this, like I said, not to put anyone on the spot, is that we all need to treat everyone with the utmost respect, and so forth. I say that because not everyone is on the same page when it comes to the race. And I see that whether it's in my business or whether I'm working for other businesses and so forth, I say that. And why I say that is because I say that because sometimes in the business world, for me, some people are not as helpful of giving the information. They rather for you to find out on your own than to come out to try to help you. So I say that, like I said, not to put anyone on the spot or anything like that. I just said that we all just need to be treated with the utmost respect, regardless of our color. And I'll leave it at that. Now, if you didn't name any things, then I probably would have said something. But other than that, yeah, I have to leave it like that.
Carolyn or Corey, do you have something to talk about in terms of other ways that racism is real, not just mean people saying mean things, but ways that it really impacts your life? And I read something recently, something that just blew my mind away. And I think of myself as pretty woke, but I read an article written by a Black woman who said, my children never leave our house, our home, without me thinking, will they be abused because of the color of their skin? And I thought, I never had that thought. I don't even think about my race, let alone my white race. And that's something she said every single day. And I thought, wow, maybe if I really, like you, I don't know. We can't escape our race, but white people have managed to escape their race. Is that true?
The whole thing you
Oh,
said
go ahead.
about mom giving the talk to her kids every day, that's real. My mother, every day we went out to school, to practices, she gave us the talk. When you go out, don't act out of character. Don't do anything that will draw attention to yourself. Make sure, you know, your hands are where they can be seen at all times. As a child, when we would walk to the park, my mother would give me and my brothers that talk. I'm a mother now. He's soon to be 3 years old next month. I have a Black son, and every night I think about his future. I shouldn't have to, and he's 3 years old. I am genuinely fearful of his future being ripped away from him. You know, you see the memes and the posts like, oh, my kid is cute now, and you love his picture now, but at what point does he become dangerous? That's true because, you know, everyone's like, oh, he's an adorable little toddler. But soon all these Black men, all these Black women, all these Black people were cute little toddlers. Now they're vicious criminals, this and that, all because they're Black. I don't think that it's fair for mothers to have to talk to their children that way. No mother should have to give their child a talk about how to be Black or what to do to be Black. Just be yourself. But the fact that so many people across the board have to do that, you know, it should wake people up to there's things out there that we're fearful of. It's not something that we're just making up to get attention or to cause riots or whatever the case is. Mothers are genuinely scared for their children. And I don't feel like it should be that way. I think that everyone, you know, should just listen. You know, I have relatives, we have white relatives. My fiance is a white man from Kansas. He didn't even experience he didn't know what racism was until he started dating me. And as our relationship progressed and more incidents happened, it just further infuriated him. You know, he just didn't understand. Before he was aware, but maybe not. And, you know, it's not that he was putting it off, but he didn't know. And when
You didn't have to know, Corey.
and
You
then
didn't
when
have
he
to
came
know.
here, he's like, the East Coast it's completely different, and being with a black girl, it's completely different, and he's furious now, and that's what I want for people. I want people to open up their minds. That's because just because you don't know that it's going on doesn't mean that it's not going on.
Okay,
Be
That's true. That's true. That's true.
and be
That's
willing
true.
to learn and understand why people are fearful to walk out of their homes. It's not for the fun of it. It's not just to say, hey, I'm scared today. Like, we're genuinely scared. And we should.
Shirley?
Yes, I would
Okay.
say, oh, you're asking me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't hear you say Sterling. I wasn't sure which Carolyn. Uh, Yes, there's definitely systematic racism. You asked the question about the medical field, how disparity is. It's definitely there. The health care that Black people get is not, it's getting better, but it's not the same that a white person would get. The old, I believe it's still that old misconception from back in, from that mindset of slavery time that Black people can take more pain than a white person. Our nerve endings are deeper, so we can experience a lot more. I've talked to some young women that have been in the, for labor, going in the hospital, and the nurses said, oh, we'll get back to you, we'll get back to you. But they know in the other room where someone is screaming and going on, they're getting treated. It's that mindset is still there. We'll get back to you.
Eh,
I'm really thankful that the schools offer dental and checkups and things like that. When that social service came into schools, because a lot of our Black children never would have had dental checkups. They wouldn't have had eye checkups, the mobile units that come around.
And Carolyn, part of that is because they were paid, their parents were doing the same work but being paid less, and then they couldn't afford the health care, and
Yes,
it's thing
systematic.
after thing after,
It is.
yeah. So I find it so instructive for people to consider racism as not, they're not mean people. They're not saying nasty things. They're not individually treating Black people poorly, but they are benefiting from the advantages of being white. And that's a whole
That's
other
true.
way of
And that's true.
Well, I'm
That's
not
true.
going to blanket that. It's not that they're not doing mean things, because there's just majority are doing mean things. It's not
Yes, yes.
undercover. They're not being undercover. A lot of this is blatant in your face. So I
And I
can't.
would say that I'll agree with Curlin on that. And I say that I'm not going to name because when I worked in HR and so forth, and I doing benefits and so forth and payroll, and when the Black man came in and applied for the job, he got paid $10 an hour. But when the white man came in and did the same thing and so forth, he got paid $22 an hour and so forth. So I see that, and that's happening to the day. And then when you have people just stereotype us, and so when you have people, you have like when the Black man or the Black person goes on welfare, that we are lazy. But when a white person goes on welfare, they're just considered poor. And so you have things like that. Or if someone Black is smoking weed or doing drugs, they are called thugs. But when a white person or somebody is doing the same thing, then they are just called the opposite. They're not called thugs. So so it's not only racism against our color or our location, but the names that we are called, or some of the things that is totally different from what if it was a white person.
Yeah, I that is
You
so
see
powerful.
that?
Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
And you see that. I see that today. And it's not you could be like Curlin stated earlier, as far as being qualified for the job. I remember going through the same thing years ago, many years ago, when I came out of high school. It was banks downtown. They had an ad in the paper. And when I went down to apply, and the bank manager came out and said, we're not doing any hiring. And I said, well, you had an ad in the paper. And he goes, we're not doing any hiring, and we don't foresee any in the future. So these are the kind of things that you hear and that you see. So you don't actually know until you walk in the shoes. until you actually walk in it.
So let me ask the three of you this because I don't know how long we want to go. But I was wondering, as you're talking to me and to Carolyn, if you had the chance to share a message, not just with other Black people, but with white people specifically, what is going to move us forward? What do we need to do? I know we need to listen. We need to validate your experiences, but specifically tell us some things that we can do. Carolyn, I don't know if that's how you feel. When you
Yes.
put together Carolyn Clouser, that was one of the things you said, right?
Right, right. In fact, it was interesting. So I have a dog and I live near the fairgrounds park, so I go over to the dog park. And there was a young man, he had two little boys and playing with this dog. He was I'm going to say he was probably late 20s, young Black man. And we didn't start out talking about race. We started out talking about dogs and how long we'd been in Hagerstown and do we like Hagerstown and just all of those kinds of things. And it worked its way around to he had gone to school in Franklin County or Cumberland County, but he was kind of right on the borderline. So he had friends who had gone to school near the elementary school where I went. And so we just had, talking about kind of the things we had in common, but it worked its way around to, and I don't want to disparage Franklin County because I think they're trying. I think it's becoming more progressive than it had been, but it was predominantly white in Franklin County, and there is some racism that exists there, and I think the people who live there are trying hard to make changes now too. But he was talking about how he was a college graduate and he was driving to Washington D.C. a couple of times a week for grad school, and he's driving this old I think it was a town car that he said he bought from a 70-year-old retired insurance man. So it wasn't like some fancy, like souped up, thug car or something. And he said he swore this one police officer that he said, I swear he stopped me every single morning for no reason. And he said, I just wanted to say to him, dude, why are you pulling me over? You know who I am. You know where I'm going. I don't even have a radio in my car. What do you think I'm doing? But it just kind of worked its way around to that. So I don't know if I'm making myself more open, or maybe it's just because of all that's going on publicly now, or out in the news. But I just wish there was a way to make Black people in general, like just the whole race, just want to step out and share those kinds of stories. But I realize that's probably very scary too. So I think I would be interested in knowing what can I do as an individual person to encourage those kinds of things.
I think that for white people, I think that you should just go with the mindset that every Black person you see has a race experience. And go to them with that go to them with that open mind, like they've experienced racism at some point in their life. What can I do to make them feel comfortable? What can I do to make sure they know I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to be the next one? I don't think that it should be Black people coming out and sharing their experiences for people to accept that it's real, because any Black person, any Black person has dealt with it. I think that accepting that there is a problem is really the first thing, because there are so many people who are not accepting the systematic racism, the discrimination. There are so many people who don't accept it because they've never seen it, or they don't know any Black people who have experienced it, or they lived in this area and they didn't grow up around Black people. It doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter if there's one Black person in your whole entire town or there's 50,000 Black people in your city. I can guarantee everyone has experienced racism, and they aren't comfortable, with police officers, with authority figures. And I think that we need to break those barriers. I think we need to make Black people feel comfortable to go to the store. I don't think that anytime a Black person's in the store attendant should be staring at them the whole entire time they're walking around. Just let us feel
Passing judgment.
comfortable in our everyday living. Like, just,
Passing judgment.
Your
yeah,
takeaway, Corey, though, is that every white person should assume that every Black person they've ever met has been the victim of either personal or systemic racism.
in some way.
Yes.
And I'm not saying like, oh, coddle them or cater to us or whatever the case is, because that's not
Right.
what we want. We don't want, this extra treatment. We just want it to be recognized. We want it to stop. And we want to be able to live our life in a way that allows us to prosper, regardless of how we look. It's not fair that me and a white girl with the same exact credentials as me has a
Right.
better chance because she's white. I think that regardless of where we are, what our status is, what our occupation is, what our past looks like, just give everyone an opportunity to be a human being. Not a Black person, not a white person, not a girl, not a boy, not this, not that, just a human being. And I think if people could get to that, we would be able to stop the racism. Because when I'm in my grave thousands of years from now, I'm gonna be a sack of bones, just like you and you and you and you. And no one's gonna know what color we were. So we're just humans. I think we all should treat each other like we're people.
All
Well
God's
said,
creations.
Well said. Linda Brooks, I'm going to let you take it away.
I would say for me that we need to fight for the truth, regardless of who we are. There's really can be no peace without justice. And there could be no justice without the truth. And there could be no truth unless someone rises up to tell the truth. So I'll leave it there, regardless of who it is, whatever is being done, we all have a story to be told, and we all need to stand up and fight for justice when something is wrong.
Thank you, Linda.
Uh-huh.
Carolyn Sterling.
I would say being treated like a human. The first thing before you can treat someone like a human is you actually have to see them. I get very insulted when anyone says to me, but I don't see color, Carolyn. I just don't see it. So to me, that's insulting because I'm not invisible. Slaves were thought to be invisible. They were out there in the fields working, but they were considered less than human. So they were invisible. What they looked, it didn't matter. They saw the Blackness, but they were still invisible because people didn't care. They weren't treated like humans. So first, you have to see me. Recognize that I laugh, I bleed, I cry, I love, just like you do. But you have to treat me somewhere in your moral compass. There should be something that says, this Black woman is a human being. And I don't mind saying Black woman first. I don't have to say I'm just one of the many women. No, a Black woman is who I am.
Right.
So see, recognize me, don't define me because I am, but get to know me. And if you decide after you've met me, you don't like me, don't let it be based on my color. Let it be
Correct.
based on something else that you found that you didn't like. So it's important that you see me. Don't look at me as invisible. Don't look through me. If I get loud, don't think that I'm an angry Black woman. When you get loud, oh, she's just trying to get her point across.
Yes.
If I show emotions, I might be weak or, again, angry. Or if I don't show emotions, oh, she's hard. You can have a white person can have the same emotions or not, and they're considered, oh, they're sentimental or they're caring. So see me, but don't define me by that. But never discount the fact that you see this Black woman in front of you.
All right, well, I am going
Excellent.
to end with this quote, but before I do, I want to thank you all for speaking honestly, for educating, for informing, for advising, for moving us forward. Thank you for your time. I also want to say that in the future, maybe there would be opportunities to do one-on-one discussions like Carolyn Sterling and I did the other day. This quote comes also from the book, I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness. The quote says, "Our only chance at dismantling racial injustice is being more curious about its origin than we are worried about our comfort. It is not a comfortable conversation for any of us. It is risky and messy. It is haunting work to recall the sins of our past. But is this not the work we have been called to anyway? Is this not the work of the Holy Spirit to illuminate truth and inspire transformation? It is haunting, but it's also holy. So may you continue to do your important work. May we together work for justice and unity, because together we are the human family." So thank you, everybody, and be sure to share this. I'm going to try to put this on Facebook. I think it happened.
I have time to share a quote.
What was that?
I have time to share a quote.
Yes, you do have
I'd
time.
like to share a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King. He says, "Our lives begin to end. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter."
Say that one more time, Carolyn.
Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter.
Thank you. How about you, Linda Brooks? Do you have a favorite quote?
I don't have a favorite quote. I'll just say that change is coming and that we need to work together and make sure that it happens.
Hey, Corey?
And I personally just want to thank the two of you for opening up, for listening, for wanting to learn, for making the steps necessary to be the change, to make sure that change does happen.
Well, you know, I certainly see as a white woman, I have a platform, and that's a privilege. And I'm into sharing my privilege, because as long as I guard my privilege, I'm keeping other people down. So thank you for that, Corey. Carolyn, how about you? Carolyn?
Yeah, so I'm taking a quote from a recent YouTube video by Bishop T.B. Jakes. And he said in that video, "This is not a black and white issue. It's a right and wrong issue." I need to put my glasses on. It's a red, white, and blue issue. It's about who we want to be as Americans. And I think I would add for myself personally, it's about who I want to be as a Christian American, a Christian in America. Like, it is a right and wrong issue. It is not about race. It's about human dignity, and we need to recognize it as such.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.